It's December 2025, and one statistic made me stop dead in my tracks. The headlines were flashing: the S&P 500 up 17% for the year, unemployment near historic lows, consumer confidence rising. But here's the shocker: half of all consumer spending is controlled by just 10% of Americans. That's right, the top 10% now account for nearly half of all spending in the U.S. economy. But here's the part no one's saying out loud. Those GDP numbers you hear on the news, they're not telling you about your economy. They're telling you about theirs. The resilient consumer they keep talking about, it's the wealthy still buying luxury goods. The rest of us, we're not even a rounding error. And this isn't just a statistic, it's a confession. Now imagine the impact of this on you. How does it feel to watch a recovery that leaves you behind? The whole narrative is built on the illusion that we're all sharing in the prosperity, but are we? Now, let's put this into perspective. What does it really mean when half of all consumer spending is controlled by just 10% of the population? It's not just about numbers, it's about who's making the decisions and who's getting left behind. The strong economy everyone's celebrating, it's a different economy for the rich. When economists talk about consumer resilience, they're talking about the rich. When they say spending is holding up, they mean the wealthy are still shopping, and the rest of us, we're the afterthought. The K-shaped economy they talk about, it's not just a trend, it's a structural divide. You've got the top arm of the K rising higher and higher, and the bottom arm, well, it's a free fall. Think about it. The numbers might look good on paper, but who are they really measuring? Who is getting richer while everyone else is stuck in neutral? Let's dig into the numbers. The bottom 50% of American households, roughly 66 million families, own just 2.5% of the nation's wealth. That's according to Federal Reserve data. Let me paint a picture for you. If all of America's wealth were a 100-meter sprint, the bottom half of the population has only made it 2.5 meters. They're still at the starting line. Meanwhile, the top 1%, they've crossed the finish line and are already on their third victory lap, owning 30% of everything. But here's where it gets chilling. The wealth gap isn't just widening, it's accelerating. In 1989, the bottom 50% owned 3.4% of the nation's wealth. Now it's dropped to 2.5%. They've lost ground, and they've done it while working more hours than ever before. And what's worse, the bottom half of America doesn't even own any significant assets. Only 1% of all stocks belong to them. When CNBC celebrates the stock market hitting new highs, that news, it's not for them. It might as well be broadcast from another planet in a language they can't understand. Now, let me tell you about something most people don't even know exists: RealPage. This company is based in Texas, and they've created a software that helps landlords set rent prices. Sounds innocent, right? But here's how it works. Landlords across the country, millions of apartment units, feed their rental data into RealPage's system. Vacancy rates, current rents, lease terms. The algorithm processes all of this data and tells landlords what they should charge. And here's the kicker: this software coordinates prices across competing landlords. Instead of fighting for renters, landlords are all working together, feeding data into the same system, which then tells them all to raise rents in unison. Internal documents from RealPage openly admitted that the system is designed to prevent rents from dropping, even when there's excess supply, when apartments are sitting empty. One landlord reported raising rents by 25% in just 11 months after adopting this software. Not because the apartments improved, not because the neighborhood got better, but because an algorithm told them they could. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, let's talk about the numbers that really should keep you up at night. Nearly 40% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. That's a car repair, a medical copay, a broken phone, or a furnace that dies in winter. For nearly half of Americans, $400 isn't just an inconvenience, it's a full-blown financial crisis. So where do they turn when this happens? Credit cards with 22% interest, payday loans at 400% APR, or those buy now, pay later schemes that slice purchases into installments and hit you with hidden fees. This isn't about individual irresponsibility. This is structural design. When work doesn't pay enough to live on, debt becomes oxygen. You can't breathe without it, and every breath you take costs you more in interest. But here's the number that should haunt every economist who talks about a strong economy. Since 2008, the Federal Reserve has printed $8 trillion. $8 trillion. That money flowed directly into the hands of the wealthy, into asset prices. Stocks rise, houses rise, and the portfolios of the wealthy swell. The real problem? The people who don't own assets are the ones who pay the price. The bottom half of America doesn't own stocks. They own their labor, they own their time, and yet every day they watch as the purchasing power of their labor shrinks, while everything they need to buy, housing, healthcare, education, food, gets more expensive. This isn't about people falling behind because they're lazy. They're falling behind because the game is rigged, and they were never given the chips to play. The middle class, they're stuck between two worlds. The haves, as I'm calling them, are terrified. They cling to their homes, their 401ks, and their jobs, desperately hoping the floor doesn't fall out beneath them. In 1971, 61% of Americans qualified as middle class by income. By 2023, that number was down to just 51%. The middle class is shrinking, and it's not just a trend, it's a collapse. Now, let me introduce you to something that sounds like a lucky break for the middle class, but it's actually a perfect example of how the system is rigged. In July 2025, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBB. The flagship promise? No tax on tips. Sounds great, right? Finally, a win for workers. Servers and bartenders would get to keep more of their money. But let's break down the math. The tip deduction is capped at $25,000 a year. For a server in the 12% tax bracket, that means they save a grand total of about $600 a year. That's $50 a month. For most tipped workers, it's even less. A bartender making $30,000 a year, maybe $400 in savings. And here's the kicker. More than 1/3 of tipped workers don't even owe federal income tax in the first place because they earn too little, so they get nothing from this tax break. Meanwhile, the same bill made permanent the 2017 corporate tax cuts, which slashed the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. That's the largest corporate tax cut in American history, costing about $4 trillion over 10 years. For every dollar spent on this tip tax break, 125 goes to corporate tax cuts. And who benefits from these corporate tax cuts? You guessed it, the top 1%. They own nearly half of all corporate stock. When you cut corporate taxes, companies get more profit. What do they do with that extra money? They buy back their own stock, the share price goes up, and guess who reaps the rewards? The shareholders. A 2024 study found that the 2017 tax cuts didn't deliver the growth or wage increases they promised, but here's what they did. Half the benefits went to the highest paid corporate executives. Not workers, not even close. This isn't trickle-down economics, this is trickle-up. And guess who's stuck in the middle, getting drenched from both sides? The haves are stuck in a terrifying spot. 1 foot in the middle class, but with an ever-growing fear that one mistake, one layoff, one AI disruption could send them tumbling into the pit below. Now let's talk about the have-lots. These aren't just the rich people we've been hearing about. They're in a completely different dimension. They have tax attorneys, private wealth managers, lobbyists, and family offices at their disposal. Their money doesn't just sit in savings accounts. It works, it multiplies, it shields itself from the rules that everyone else has to follow. In 2025, the 50 richest Americans saw their median net worth increase by $10 billion each. Let that sink in. That's not a collective number. That's per person in just 1 year. And Elon Musk, he gained $187 billion, enough to fund the entire annual budget of NASA 7 times over. But here's the real kicker. A ProPublica investigation revealed that the top 25 richest Americans paid an average effective tax rate of just 3.4% on their wealth growth from 2014 to 2018. Some years they paid zero. Musk, Bezos, and others, zero. How is this possible? It's not fraud. It's not illegal. They've simply written the rules. This is called the buy, borrow, die strategy. Let me break down buy, borrow, die for you. This is the method that keeps the ultra wealthy at the top, generation after generation. Step 1, buy assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, anything that appreciates over time. These assets grow in value year after year. But here's the twist. In the US, you don't owe taxes on your investment gains until you sell them. Those gains, they're called unrealized gains, and the IRS can't touch them as long as you don't sell. Step 2, borrow. If you never sell your assets, how do you live the high life? Simple. You borrow against them. Take a loan using your stocks or real estate as collateral. Banks will gladly lend billions to someone like Elon Musk at interest rates of just 1% or 2%. But here's the beauty of it. Borrowed money isn't taxed as income. So instead of paying millions in taxes when you sell your stocks, you borrow against them and keep your money tax-free. Step 3, die. When the ultra-wealthy die, their heirs inherit those assets at their current value, but all those unrealized gains are wiped clean. They can sell the assets the next day and owe zero capital gains tax. That $490 million gain taxed at nothing. This isn't some loophole, it's the system itself, and it's been like this for over 100 years.